Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Hey, real quick, guys, I want to make a couple of special announcements before today's video. The first announcement is from Thursday, May 8th until about Monday, I am going to be out the studio. The reason being, I am turning 30 on May 8th. And for my 30th birthday, I am taking a trip. It should be fun. I'm excited for it. I have a lot of videos that are going to release while I'm out of town. So don't worry, the same videos and content is going to be coming out while I'm on this break. I'm just letting you guys know so that if something breaks between Thursday or Sunday and you're seeing me bring on these great guests, G. Bush, Tyvis Powell, etc., and you're wondering why I'm not talking about some piece of news that dropped or why we're acting like that didn't happen, that's why. And I will be back Monday to be able to talk about whatever it is that dropped. So just letting you guys know that one. The second announcement I want to make real quick is me and Trey did a great job recording this video. We had a great conversation about the Cleveland Browns and the draft. And I love bringing in Trey. He covers the Falcons for the Falcoholic because he's a really good voice to bring on to kind of get an outsider's perspective on what the Cleveland Browns are doing and how they're seen around the league. The only problem is that we did too good of a job having a great conversation. We talked for like 90 minutes, mostly my fault. And instead of dropping a 90-minute video here on you guys, which I know some people would enjoy, I decided to split it up into two parts. One part where we're talking about all the draft picks that are not quarterbacks, and then all the draft picks that were quarterbacks in the Cleveland Browns draft. Because I think the quarterbacks video kind of deserves its own spotlight because we did have pretty thoughtful, in-depth conversation about the pros and cons both guys bring to the table. So if you see a weird edit here, that's why. But those are the updates. Now on to the video. The draft came. We have heard all the Cleveland perspective of what people like, what people don't like. But y'all know on this channel, I like to dig outside of that Cleveland bubble. I like to bring people in who don't have a dog in this fight, who don't really have an investment in thinking the Cleveland Browns draft works out good or bad. So to help me do that, I got my homeboy Tre'shon in here. Trey, very interesting draft this year. I would say this is one of the more intriguing drafts of the last, couple of years. Like, since they started moving these things to cities, it hasn't really been that intriguing. There's been a lot of talent, but not intriguing. This is one of those drafts where, like, oh, man, like, after New York at 3, I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, I'm still like a little, still processing some of the moves that were made, especially from the Atlanta Falcons perspective. But when Cleveland made the decision to get moving, I was like, okay, well, here we go. We're finally going to have some action here at the top because, like you said, I feel like it's kind of been like, there's all these hype going in, and then it's just kind of like, just kind of is just, oh, okay, pick, no big trade, nothing. We saw Hunter get moved. We saw you guys go DT in the top 5. So, I think a lot of people were surprised, but also felt like rewarded from sticking through and tuning into the draft this year, because sometimes it does not feel very rewarding to sit through all 3 days of this.
No, it was a 3-day event this year, man. It was a 3-day event. We need somebody to drop every year into day 3 if we go have to cover it. But let's start with the first move that the Browns made in the draft, right? I hated the idea of trading back before the draft and immediately when it happened, because I've watched the Browns, unironically enough, for you guys don't know, Trey does cover the Atlanta Falcons, trade with teams like Atlanta and give you guys players like Julio Jones for a bunch of players who were not Julio Jones, right? So I know the pitfalls of the trading back and getting addicted to that and all the extra assets. It couldn't work out. It could be like you get the 26th pick in the draft, right? Now, that being said, the Falcons were in a much better place when they traded for Julio Jones than the Jacksonville Jaguars were, right? Like significantly different places there. The Jaguars at the 5th pick. Browns stay at the 5th pick, take Mason Graham, also take home an extra second and an extra first. And my second thought after being disappointed they didn't just take Travis Hunter is, well, you got an extra first for moving back 3 spots, and I don't think anybody anticipated that being the case. Like
some teams gave up a first.
Oh yeah, my bad. I
was like, I know other teams that gave up a first. And they didn't get Travis Hunter in the equation.
So you're saying we should call it the Falcons?
You should have picked up the phone, because who knows what you could have gotten.
You think they take James Pierce number 2?
Man, I tell people this all the time. Getting into the mind of Terry Fontenot is not a fun experience, and not one I really try to spend too much time doing, because you just don't know what's going on up there.
Scary Terry, right? But what did you think of the draft compensation Cleveland Browns got back, and the selection of Mason Graham, who I think was like was first team all draft nerd? Like consensus first team all draft nerd, right? Like,
yeah, man. The first thing that went to my head was the Julio trade. And like when I saw the deal, immediately I'm like, that's good value for Cleveland. Like there's no like it's Travis Hunter. He's an amazing player. It's still great value for Cleveland at the end of the day. I also said to myself, I've seen, a team kind of like with Julio do this before, and like I would argue that the Falcons won the Julio trade. But to your point, that's like
you have to argue that.
It's like, well, yeah, I'm just trying to be political here. I'm not going to come in and
No, Browns fans will admit it first.
But yeah, when you get a Hall of Famer out of the equation, you win. So, the Falcons did a good job. But like you said, I believe that was year 2 of Matt Ryan, back-to-back playoff appearances. You kind of can make a move to do that. Jacksonville is obviously trying to make a big splash, and I think Travis Hunter has the potential to be one of those very, very special players. A Myles Garrett, a Julio Jones, just kind of one of those real deal blue chip players. So it's tough when you lose out on those guys. But when I look at what the Browns did overall and the moves that they made, especially for, I think, this defense, I really like what they ended up, doing at the draft. And I think Mason Graham, I think that's like a home run pick. I think that's going to give you real stability. Everybody wants to run the ball again. And when you look at how some teams draft, the 49ers drafted to stop the run. There's quite a few teams out here who drafted where you can tell they needed to really bolster up their run defense. And the Browns, with their first 2 picks, I think they really did a good job of kind of like shoring up, whatever issues they may have felt like they had on that side of the ball, while like having some nice upside for the future. I really like Graham, but I really like Schweissinger. Boy, that's going to trip me up all season. But Carson is a really fun linebacker as well.
Yeah, Swess. Is this Schweissinger instead of Schwessinger?
Schweissinger. I've heard it. We'll know soon enough. That's a name that I think we're going to hear on Sundays enough to the point to where we won't mistake it like we are now.
I want to know what name the locker room gives him. Like that's what I will call him.
They call him Schweissinger.
Yeah, Swiss. Like we'll see what they come up with. That's the pronunciation that I would then rock with there, with Carson. But let's talk about Mason Graham real quick. I got a chance to watch his tape. What stands out to me is like Mason Graham is one of these defensive tackles that's always in control of where he wants to go. And that is a rare trait for a defensive tackle, right? Because you'll watch guys get their head down, they can move somebody out the way, but 60% of that tape is like, okay, well, they're getting moved here, they got washed here, they got on the block down there. With Mason, it's like very rarely are you just seeing him being washed out the way. And it's like he's able to kind of go fill whichever gap that he wants to. And then I think the other part of him is he has really tremendous bend for a 315-pound guy. And I think about how you can use that with a guy like Myles Garrett on the other side of him. And in a Jim Schwartz defense where there's going to be a lot of space, right? Especially with Myles there commanding so much attention. I mean, you've seen it where guys, the teams will put 3 people on Myles Garrett, right? A guard, tackle, and a tight end to chip. So there's going to be a lot of space there next to Myles. How does a guy like Mason Graham, in your view, kind of expand what you can get away with Myles Garrett?
Yeah, so it kind of reminds me of like the potential matchup that we saw with Gerard Verse and Brandon Fisk. So you talk about these big boys who have this kind of like really special ability to bend and have this unique skill set that kind of lets them do a lot of stuff that normal DTs can't do. I mean, this guy's gonna let you kind of pair a lot more stunts and loops and just different kind of blitz packages with Myles. You're gonna be able to see them work off of each other. He's gonna clear open gaps that Myles are going to be able to run through, and vice versa. I think when you watch how Michigan used him and used Grant, you kind of see like they had a really good understanding of how to play these abilities off one another. And I think when you talk about the stoutness and when you talk about Graham's ability to kind of maintain his gap, he doesn't get washed down a lot, like you pointed out. The other thing that really stands out is like he's not on his knees a lot. He's not on the ground a lot. When you watch a lot of these college DTs, you feel like once every 3 reps the guy's on the ground. Even if they win with leverage or win, however, you usually see oh,
They're
they're
out of
tripping
control
up,
sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, Graham is very sound, and it kind of feels like he's going to be where you need him to be. And if you're a team that wants to run and execute some more exotic stunts and things like that, you need a guy who can actually hold his own at the point of attack. And he's a guy that I think can do that and really does open up a lot of opportunities for Myles.
Yeah, because I think one of the things I love about watching defensive tackle play is it's like watching dominoes fall, right? To be able to point out who's effective and who's not, right? Because I think people would jump to, pressures and sack numbers. It's not like that with DT sometimes, right? Sometimes you get DTs in the system where they can get a ton of sacks. Sometimes they're in a system like I think DJ Reader, Cincinnati 2023. It was like he was so good for Cincinnati that year. But you look at the stat sheet, you don't see it. But then you watch the tape and you're like, oh, why didn't this guard get here? Oh, because DJ Reader just blew up the whole right side of the play and made that guard have to step like 8 steps out the way in order to try to get that spot. And then the running back ran into the back of that guard. And then the linebacker came up, got the TFL. Wasn't the linebacker that did it. That was DJ Reader, right? And when you watch Mason Graham, there's a lot of moments where you're like, okay, yeah, that guy got the TFL. But that was Mason's. Like he deserves a half point for that at least, because he is a disruptor, a hellraiser on the defensive line, always able to get past his guy. And when you're always able to do that, even if you're not getting home, you're going to disrupt a lot of stuff because they're not accounting for you to be there, right? Even if you are Mason Graham. And that was at Michigan where there's not Myles there. Right. Like, having Myles there probably going to be beneficial to him as long as he can adjust to the NFL game. Let's talk about pick number 33 now, Carson Swissinger. Fun player. Finally was able to watch tape on him. I did not watch much of him pre-draft. I didn't think the Browns would go top 2 linebackers this year, but was able to watch him. He, I don't know what to call it, but he's just like one of those super smooth athletes at the linebacker position where it just never looks like he is doing something he's not trying to do intentionally. Like it always seems intentional with him. Like his slides are really smooth, right? The way he can slide, gain ground, and then gap fill. And he can shoot the gap too, but he's not over eager, right? Like he's not like I think JOK's Notre Dame tape was like, hey man, if he misses, like that's gonna be a problem because he just goes so fast to that gap. Where Schlesinger is a little bit more measured with it. And then, he can legitimately carry the scene at the linebacker position at 240 pounds, right? Like, I think all of this stuff is very impressive of him. You've watched him about as much as I have. What are your thoughts about Swess?
Yeah. So I was I watched him early in the process, and kind of from the get go, I was like, I think this guy's going to have the best hips in the class.
Mm.
His change of direction, his ability to go backwards. I don't think anybody in this draft class, including Jahad Campbell, can really compete with it. He had very impressive tape. But when you talk about carrying the seam, I mean, it's like watching, it really felt like I was just watching like some kind of safety hybrid halftime on the field. The movement is really good. His understanding of leverage is very good. I really only feel like he had one mistake, and it came in the LSU game, in which he kind of just didn't really, I think, trust his own speed. But through the rest of his tape, I never really saw any issues show up. I agree with you. I think that when a lot of people are watching linebackers, they're kind of looking for this, you know, they almost want to see it happen instantaneously when it comes to like shooting the gap and stuff like that. But there is like patience required, and he does a really good job of kind of not, I would say, overflowing to the football. He doesn't really get influenced as hard as some other guys, which is going to be great because in the league they really pick on you with play action and a lot more concepts. So I think he's somebody that's going to be a smart football player. He was worked himself up from being a walk on to getting that final starting role in his last year, and he really took advantage of it. My only concerns with him is really weight. Like, he weighed in at 240 at the combine. His playing weight was definitely not 240. I think he was listed around in the 220s. And his group says like, well, he was really up in 230 at that point, but it's just going to come down to him needing to gain a little bit of strength. But when you got guys like Mason Graham in front of you who can kind of, prevent the guard from getting where they need to go and you're not getting reached at the second level, he's a guy that's going to thrive in that environment because if he's going to get to play clean and he doesn't have to worry about shedding and taking on blocks, then he's going to be a nightmare because this dude can go sideline to sideline. He has, actual full field coverage ability, which you see a lot of people look for. They say this guy has it or they think he can have it, but it shows up on his tape consistently. He's a legit modern Will. And I was looking at him a lot because he's somebody to me where I'm like Scream Spangio system. And if this guy just has the ability to run around out there, he's going to be a problem. I really like him and think he could be the best linebacker in this class.
No, there was one rep, I think it was versus Iowa, where he bites on the play action, cuts back, robots to the middle of the field, and then like follows this route and then like gets up to seam. And I'm like, oh my God. Like it's like a drill at the combine that you run that he just did in this game. And I was like, that sold me on him. I was like, okay, this guy can move at the linebacker position, not one-dimensional at all. And yeah, I think the one thing I did point out with his tape was, and I think you saw this in the LSU game more than any. Well, I think you saw it in some goal line sets in the Nebraska game too, but he does need to get a little bit more powerful, right? Like sometimes he's not gonna do the marquee linebacker thing where it's like it's running back linebacker one-on-one at the goal line and you stop his momentum backwards. He didn't do very much of that, right? Like, and I think that's what Jahad Campbell had over him. It was like Jahad could just be a brick wall to you, right? That's not Swissinger right now, but I think if he gets a little bit more powerful, I think that's something that he can add to his game. Big linebacker for today's age too, right? Like these guys are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I think teams are going to start to take advantage of that sooner than later and start to run the ball on these linebackers. So you want to get bigger. And I think the Browns, I'm just knock on wood, I think they're ahead of the trend here because they went real heavy in run defense, which they weren't great at last year. And these first two picks scream, okay, we need to get better at this because this is where teams are going to try to attack us. Especially when we got Myles Garrett, who's trying to throw the ball, right? Like, honestly. So it makes a ton of sense there. Take away that weakness, right? The ability to just go to the run game to take Myles out of it and force them to throw the ball and give Myles Garrett time to rush. That's how you build up those numbers, and then you give them help in the interior with a guy like Mason Graham who can be a good run defender, obviously, but also really help you in the pass game because he has a lot of things he can bring to the table there. All right. Now, this is the more controversial pick that the Browns had in the second round. Quinnshon Judkins. I think I understand why the Browns did it, but I can understand how somebody could look at this and go, the Arrested Development joke, him? Like, you got a problem with him. It's just like, oh, him. Didn't expect him to be pick 39 in the draft. What's your thoughts on Quinn? And do you see why the Browns made that pick?
I think I would, pick 36, pick 30. It seemed a little high. I was a little surprised. I get the why. Obviously they're a little bit concerned with Chubb's health, and maybe the longevity there. So, sure, it makes sense going running back. I feel like they could have gotten really good value at 67 still, or probably 94. So for me, I think it just kind of comes down to more of from where you stand, philosophically, hey, if it's your guy, you like him, I get it. You go get him, you grab him. If you're trying to kind of see if you can squeeze the most value out of this draft, I probably would have waited a little bit later to go running back. The player to me, I think, is just going to be a solid RB2. I don't really think Judkins is special or has any elite traits, but I don't think I don't think he's below average at anything either. So you're going to have a really solid guy in your room. And hey, if you're going to start doing this thing by committee, or if you just kind of want to have some guys in the stables while you're trying to find another Chubb caliber back, or if you just want to have Chubb for this year, given some break or whatever the plan is, it makes sense. But it was definitely, I think, besides, I think, the pick later in the third round that kind of surprised me the most from the draft on day 2.
Well, we'll get to that pick, most certainly. The thing with Quinn is I think they picked Q there because the Browns the last few years have been the league leader in negative yard runs, right? They have 3 running backs on the roster. Nick Chubb, even at his best, will get you negative runs, and he's not even on the roster right now. We'll see if they bring him back. Jerome Ford, king of the hit or miss, right? You talk to fantasy football people, they love him, right? Because Jerome Ford hits home runs. But you talk to Browns fans, they hate him because Jerome Ford gets tackled behind the line of scrimmage a lot, right? And then Pierre Strong, worst contact balance I've ever seen in running back all time, top 5. Got to be worse. A strong breeze to knock him over. So I think the Browns went to this draft saying, we got to get somebody who we trust can get positive yards on first down, right? Even if it's not there, he can put his head down, move the pile, do stuff like that. Short yardage situations for this team, even with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's never been a great short yardage back, right? He looks like he should, but he's always been a more patient runner. That's always cost him in short yardage situations. We've always put Kareem Hunt in those situations. I think they look at Quinn and go, he can do a lot of what Kareem Hunt used to do. He's much younger, more athletic than Kareem Hunt was when he's here. And Kareem Hunt had a lot of success in Cleveland. And they think in this system, you can turn that guy into a 800 to 1,000 yard runner, or at least have him be a vital part of a split running back system. They drafted 2. We'll talk about the other guy they got there too. But I think they were like, let's get guys who's hard to tackle, and really just has a good nose for going north and a good nose for the end zone. And I think that made him very attractive to the Browns because we couldn't finish drives to save our lives last year. So many goal line stands last year that were successful against us. And I think that's part of why they went with him there. And I get if that's your thinking at running back, why you might value him over a Caleb Johnson, who also gets uphill, but a little bit more patient, right?
Yeah, and do you guys run outside zone or wide zone as much as you used to?
I don't know if we're going to run it as much without Nick Chubb, to be honest with you, because it was really a Nick Chubb, get him downhill, kind of like the same idea with Derrick Henry, right? You get him downhill, you give him 3 steps, and then he's very hard to tackle. I think we're probably going to run a lot of it's going to look a lot like what he did at Ole Miss versus at Ohio State.
Okay.
So that's my guess on where this thing's going. We'll see. But yeah, I get why that would be the case there. The Quinnshon over Travion thing, here's what I'll say to that. Jerome Ford is very similar to Travion. Travion's obviously better than Jerome Ford, but skill set wise, they're pretty similar. And we've seen what that skill set looks like in our offense. And I'm not doubting that Tre'shon could do that at a higher level, but it doesn't solve the initial problem that, hey, we get behind the sticks with our run game. Far too often we have nobody we can rely on to move this game more down the chains than what's needed. So yeah, Quinn there, I get it. I get what they're trying to do. It's one of those picks where I'm like, I understand the vision. I gotta see it though, I think I gotta see it and see what that looks like. But yeah, I understand the vision there. Now, one vision I didn't have to be sold on was the first third round pick, Harl Fann Jr. I've been on this. Browns fan have been on this for a while. Such a fun player, obviously, because he's local. That adds another level to it for Cleveland fans. And there's some similarities to how he looks when he runs the ball, to how David Njoku looks when he runs the ball, where he's stiff arming guys and yoking guys. Very fun prospect to watch. I mean, just absolutely destroyed some Power 5 schools, good Power 5 schools too, right? Texas A&M almost went to the SEC championship game last year. Penn State, I would argue, second best team in football in college football last year. Really should have got to the national championship game. And he tore both up back-to-back weeks. What do you think about Harold, his fit in the Browns offense, where they're probably going to be running a lot of 12, right? Using him off the ball, on the ball sometimes, a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I think I really like this fit. So it's Fannin had a really funny cycle. Kind of was at the beginning, people were like, this is going to be tight end one. This is going to be the guy's first kind of guy. Blah blah blah. Then it kind of felt like his doubters were kind of taking over at that point, and it was this guy's not going to be taken until round 4, round 5. Look at how high his hips are, and people start getting really really nitpicky. And at the end of the day, I think he went right where he should. Seemed like a round 3 player. He offers a lot, I think, as a receiver. I know people are, not a believer in the true tight end ability. But to your point, if we're running 12, if we've got him backside, if we are utilizing him and his skill set in the correct way, then it's not a problem. And I think that's kind of something that we all get caught up in when we go through these cycles, as we look at what these players are now, and we're very hyper focused on what they are now. But when we aren't adding in the calculation, when we are adding in the variable of where they're going or things like that, then we're not doing a full scouting job, right? We're really boxing these guys in. And so with him being in Cleveland, I really like the opportunities that he's going to get as a receiver. I think that he's somebody that can kind of be used in a similar role as the way the Bills use their tight ends, and they use Kincaid. So you kind of have this guy who's going to be able to work in the slot. I think he's going to be able to even do some fun stuff from an H-back, wing back kind of alignment too. I think we saw him get some work there at the Senior Bowl, and I like the versatility that he's going to give and bring to that offense, because it's going to let you guys stay in some run heavy packages with some real receiving threats. It's going to let you guys get some fun, I think, goal line lineups going. And so I really like what Stefanski's going to be able to cook up in some of these heavier packages where a lot of teams maybe feel a little bit more limited. I think Cleveland's going to have a bit of an edge there. And we see how they're definitely dedicated to running the football. So it seems like he was a part of that equation when they were looking at how are we going to retool this offense with this rookie class.
Yeah, so much of this rookie class feels like they want to attack base personnels of the other teams that they play. And this is a huge step in doing that, right? Like what Harl Fann is not going to be a mismatch if a DB's on him in the slot, right? But if you force a linebacker on him, then he becomes a mismatch, right? So you want to kind of force them off of their nickel and dime packages. And the way you do that is you're able to run the ball, you're able to get heavier out there. And I think he's a huge part being able to enable that. And you look at what the Browns done, will like to do with like Jordan Akins, where they have him play the slot a lot. Or somebody like Harrison Bryant when he was here did some H-back stuff for the team as well as like lined up in the slot. He fits into that role seamlessly. I think that's going to be what they envision for him. And I think that'd make a ton of sense for him to play off of Njoku.
Cheating. I remember when I started looking at him after because I was like, oh, the Browns drafted another running back. And I hadn't really done a ton of work on him or seen much because this was a super super deep class. But I liked what I saw. He seems like a very in my opinion, kind of like traditional, almost somewhat old school three down back. He just has, I think, the ability to stay on the field, which is important, obviously. But what I think it can do for the Browns offense is just kind of always keep them in a position where they're not really kind of playing their hand into, oh, it's definitely going to be a pass. Sampson's out there. It's definitely going to be whatever, Quinn's out there now. So we know they're running. I think what he allows them to do is like have a legitimate stable that keeps the defense on their toes still, right? Like you mentioned, like the contact balance, all these skills that kind of align with Quinnshon. Um, it, uh, it makes a lot of sense when you're trying to do this by committee thing, because I think where a lot of people lose it when they think of committees is they think of each guy only being good at one thing. When really I think about when I think of the best committees, it's all of those guys being a very good running back at a baseline level. And then from there, they each have a peak as to whether it's power, elusiveness, what have you. And so for him, I kind of like this fit here on the Browns because I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities. And I think the offense is going to work well for him. Anybody who comes out of that Tennessee scheme. I know people are usually concerned when it's like receivers or QBs or whatnot, but like from the running back standpoint, this guy had to take a lot of snaps back there in pass protection. You like that. And you kind of like that he's had to do non-traditional run scheme stuff. And really, those running backs are kind of, it's feast or famine in that offense. They have to do a lot on their own because they just get some very simple blocking zone concepts for them. And that's it.
Yeah, there's not a lot downfield, right? Like
No.
when everybody's spread out like that, right? You're sacrificing a lot of that. So you're kind of on your own, which is a great point to make about Dylan. Super productive, only 20 years old, not a ton of tread on the tires, too.
Yeah, it's his first year starting, right?
Yeah, so really only 1 year starting here. So yeah, I think that tandem works out. And I think the ideal is if you don't bring back Nick Chubb, if you bring back Nick Chubb or if you bring Jerome Ford in, the ideal is you have two guys who can carry the bulk of the load, right? The 3-4 yards, whatever you need out of them on first down, second downs. And then you have your home run hitters, right? And I think Jerome Ford slots in there as somebody he can hit a home run for sure and get a big play. And I think Jerome Ford pisses Browns fans off when he has to carry the ball like a feature back because he's not. But I think if you just saw Jerome Ford like maybe 8 to 10 times a game, right? And he's doing toss sweep and like 3 of them break off for a big play, you're like, Jerome, yeah, let's get Jerome Ford. Like, I think people like it a lot more. But when Jerome Ford's always in the game, it's like, oh, dude, like he's gonna do something to piss you off. And he's just one of those running backs that you got to figure out how to use, right? Because there's a use for him in the league. I think he's gonna end up like in Miami one day and like have like a career renaissance or something like that, someplace there. Let's talk about. All right, but in all seriousness, thank you, Trey, for being on. If you have any concerns about Dylan Gabriel, ask Trey about it. He is the one who suggested him to the Cleveland Browns, and why Dylan Gabriel is here. So blame him. Blame him for everything that happens, and hope Terry trades us a first-round pick next year. I think Terry's gonna give us a first-round pick.
First and Kirk Cousins. Or Dylan Gabriel.
Dylan Gabriel, baby, bring it right. We need to give Penix some competition.
Penix needs a lefty competition in the building. Just makes sense.
Worst case scenario, he could be the best backup in the league. That's worth first. Yeah, come on, Terry. Give us one of those crazy trades. I'm looking forward to it. I think Andrew has his number saved. If he makes it to next offseason, we'll see how this season go. But a lot of interesting. Thank you for being on. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.